Well, we are live. This is Women Shaping Procurement, Session 1. And I have some of the greatest guests I could possibly ask for on this live panel. We're going to take a few moments here to allow people to log in and get themselves settled and tune in. Jeff Talbot, he's logged in. Thank you. Hi, Jeff. How are you? Thanks for tuning in. So we've got a lot planned for today, and this should not take more than an hour, but it's going to be jam-packed with goodness. So thank you, everyone, for taking time out of your day, whether this is your lunch break, whether this is your breakfast, or perhaps it's past your work hours and you're tuning in. We really appreciate everything, and we appreciate you taking the time. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started here. All right. So the reason we're here, you can see with the title Women Shaping Procurement, is to, one, celebrate women in procurement, sourcing, supply chain, all of those industries. But I don't think that celebration is enough, right? So we have Women's History Month. We have International Women's Day. This is actually also Procurement Month. So I love that we have the time during the calendar year to celebrate women, especially within procurement. But this panel is more than that. Yes, we're celebrating, but we also bring awareness to things like gender pay gap, diversity within the workplace, and all of the complications and challenges that women are facing in procurement right now, and supply chain and sourcing. So these discussions are for that purpose. It's not just to celebrate and bring awareness. We also want to take action. And I feel like having this platform as a brand, as the Una brand, we have a privilege and we have a responsibility to do more than celebrate and bring awareness. So we're hoping that with this panel, you'll be better prepared to help be an ally for women in procurement, sourcing, and supply chain. So with that, I would like to introduce who we have on the panel today. I am going to go over just a few pieces of admin for everybody as we do this panel. But just so that you know, here we have Don Tira, we have Cindy Riddle, and we have Jill Robbins. They're going to formally introduce themselves and give you a little background here in a moment. I just want everyone to know that as we go through this panel, I would like for you to submit your questions. There's not going to be a designated time for questions at the end. I'd like to make sure that we're all having a conversation and engaging as we go. So if you have a question, go ahead and submit it, and we'll make sure to get it answered during this time. So before we started this panel, I sent out a survey to over 100 women leaders in procurement and supply chain and asked a few questions about the impact of women in the sourcing industries in 2020, specifically through the pandemic. And there was a particular answer that struck me, and it is basically the why behind having this panel and celebrating women in procurement. So I'm going to go ahead and read that. And this is by Samantha Stryker. She works for Tealbook. Sorry, she's at Tealbook, and she responded to the survey and had such an amazing thought that I wanted to start this panel with. So she says, for centuries, women fought for equal footing. In the last century, we saw women gain speed and accessibility to achieve ever higher than before. A global pandemic forcing us all to work from home made us glaringly aware of our spouses' duties and responsibilities at home and work. It's been shown that coworkers are empathetic to parents during COVID-19. Those women have spent years embracing work cultures and expectations as is for decades. Those who have powered through all the change while painfully embracing the new normal of their chaotic schedules are armed to the teeth to continue expanding women's presence in leadership and navigating transformational efforts. I'm just going to let that sink in. I feel like she really encapsulated the tenacity of women in procurement, what we've been up against, and how we are going to use that energy to basically kick butt in 2021. So let that sink in as we move forward in the panel. And before we get to our formal introductions, I just want to introduce Una as a brand to everyone that's watching if you're not aware. Una is a sourcing accelerator. We help organizations save time, money, and effort on the products and services they use every day to run a business. And as a brand, our goal is to empower procurement and to help organizations become more profitable. So the idea of having a panel that empowers women in procurement was very natural for us, and seemed like, you know, my personal responsibility and the brand's personal responsibility to make sure that we are facilitating these conversations. So moving forward, now that you know why we're here, who we are, and personally, I don't even think I've introduced myself. I'm Catherine McCleary. I handle marketing for Una, and I've got a great group of women here, and I will let them introduce themselves, starting with Dawn.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. So my name is Dawn Tura, and I am so excited to be with you guys today, and I was thrilled when I was asked to be on this panel. So my professional role is I'm the president and CEO of Sourcing Industry Group, known as SIG. And so I get to operate and be a part of the world's largest association of sourcing professionals. And so what makes that special is that our entire company is dedicated to elevating the office of the Chief Procurement Officer. And so while I'm older than my other two panelists, and so what I also recognize is that women have come so far in the procurement world. When I first started out, they were buyers. There was possibly a purchasing organization. There was no such thing as a C-level suite, CPO, and we were also seen as an overhead organization. So I have had the pleasure of being in procurement for a number of years, for about 20 years, post becoming a CPA, and I'm a recovering CPA. But once I got into procurement, I fell in love with what we can change in organizations. And I've also realized the power of being a woman, that it's very, very powerful to be able to bring your female traits to the job and not to stifle all of that. And I have been embracing that since day one. And, you know, interesting enough, you know, I was not going to come on camera because, like some women, I'm a little bit vain. And I told Catherine that I had eye surgery and I'm not going to be on camera. And I thought, you know what? That's one of the stereotypes that we have to break, is that our looks don't matter. It's our capabilities. And so I'm coming on for the first time in my life that I've come on like this to say I'm embracing myself. I'm a woman. I'm a leader. I love procurement. I love sourcing. I love the industry that we're in. And I love upskilling people. And I love embracing and being an ally of women in procurement. And just as importantly, I believe in all of the diversity and inclusion that is finally getting the attention it deserves. So thank you for the invitation, Catherine. I'm so pleased to be here.
Well, I'll be the first to say it. You look beautiful, so don't even worry about it. Then the next person we have on our panel is Cindy Riddle. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Sure. Thanks, Catherine. It's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me on the panel. Jill, Dawn, it's a pleasure and honor to be with you both as well. I am Cindy Riddle, and I am a senior sourcing advisor at Una. The way that I best like to describe my role is I'm an extension of our members' procurement team. I have one of the greatest jobs because I get to work with hundreds of different organizations. So it's like I work at hundreds of different organizations with our procurement members. I work with them in a capacity of not only sourcing in helping them through our contracts, but also lots of different strategies. So be it tactical or very strategic. So it's a very fun role. And from a perspective of working with women, I do get to work with few women, not enough, I'll say that. It's still a majority of males do come in the procurement role, but it's definitely enlightening to see more and more, and younger ones, I'll say that as well. So we need more women in procurement, specifically the younger ones, and we need to, lift each other up. So I know we're getting into that today, later, and I would be remiss if I also did not introduce Miss RBG herself on my T-shirt.
Yes.
Women's Month, I had to represent, and I believe, she said it best when she said, "I ask no favors for my sex. All I ask of our brethren is that they take their feet off our necks." So glad to be here. Thank you, Catherine, and I'm excited for today.
Cindy, couldn't love you more. Love your shirt. Thank you. Thank you for bringing it today. Appreciate it. Can't wait to get to your portion of the panel. And last but certainly not least, we have Jill Robbins here with us. And just so you guys know, I'm seeing so many comments come through. So throughout the live stream here, we'll bring those up. Everybody's saying hello and that they're excited to be at the panel today. So love that. Very encouraging. All right, Jill, go ahead and let us know a little bit about yourself.
Yes, thank you, Catherine, and thank you to Una. And I'm honored to be here with Dawn and with Cindy, who are leaders in the global procurement profession. So I'm excited for the panel today. So just a little bit about me. I've been in procurement for a little over 20 years on the corporate procurement side, leading indirect teams. I've spent time in Lean Six Sigma, time in business development, and most recently was leading a global team. I had people reporting to me on every continent, and we'll get into that a little bit more when we have the Q&A session. I'm a mom to a 5-year-old, and I love to work out. So I think the pandemic has allowed all of us to kind of reprioritize our health and family. So I view this as a blessing, what we've been through, even though it has been a challenge in many ways, which we'll talk about.
Thank you so much, Jill. And just to reset the room here, I know we're only starting, but for those of you who are just now joining us, this is the Women Shaping Procurement live panel session number 1. And we're going to dig right into the topics here. Just to let you know, you can feel free to add your questions or comments throughout the live stream. We will be answering those throughout. There will not be a time at the end just for questions. So if you've got one, push it on through and we'll be sure to answer it. So for each of our panelists, we have a question. One is very much related to the panel. And then we also want to know what you're binge watching. I feel like we're all still stuck at home. We are working from home. And I don't know about all of you, but I kind of need to plus up my list of Netflix and Hulu and all of that. I'm looking for the next show. So selfishly, maybe this is you're doing me a favor, but I feel like you can judge a person slightly in a fun way about the shows that they're watching. And I would love to hear from each of you. First of all, what you're binging, and then we can get right into your question. So Dawn, I have you up first. So let us know what show you are absolutely in love with and binging right now, or perhaps maybe you're one of the people that just watches one per week. I don't know that life.
No, I get on a show and I don't let go until I'm done with every season. So I mean, I've watched all of the big brands that have been out there, but then we started going back into some older titles, and I just got through with a series called Lie to Me. And if you haven't seen it, you need to look at it, because I now think next time I go into procurement negotiations, I'm going to be armed with all kinds of things I didn't know about facial microaggressions. So it's a really interesting one. And of course, I applied it to procurement. And then I just started 2 days ago, something called Damages. And it's about a female attorney, Glenn Close, who I thought must be 100 years old. She's not. It's an amazing series, and it's about strong, powerful women and a lot of mental manipulation. So I have enjoyed it because the sitting star of the entire show is Glenn Close as an attorney and a very powerful woman with children, a child and a partner and all kinds of issues on balancing her life. But just a lot of fun, and you can learn a lot from that show as well. So those are my two, sort of offbeat.
Okay. Love that, especially love. And you said Glenn Close was in the last show there.
Mm-hmm.
I'll watch Glenn Close any day. Strong female. Okay, so Dawn, my question for you for this panel is, do you think that we saw more female leaders in procurement and supply chain rise up in 2020? And if so, why do you think that is?
So absolutely. I think the men in procurement have done a great job as well, especially those who have come into a work from home. The pandemic taught us that you need to go past the normal boundaries and have conversations that you wouldn't have had before. In a normal workplace, I'm not going to spend as much time, because it's personal, asking how is your child doing in school? Are they struggling? What is it like to be homeschooling a number of kids? And I'm a mother of 6. So but luckily for me, I'm only homeschooling one senior. All the rest are in college or beyond. But you had to have these conversations with people. You had to suddenly have empathy that there's a newborn there, or you've got a 7-year-old who is just so upset and cries because he can't see his teacher, or you have a child who just doesn't want to sit in front of the computer and do Zoom. And so women have had the ability, I think, to have these conversations on a much more candid basis with their employees, to say, hey, I get it, and your work schedule has to be completely flexible. I don't care if you do the work at 5 in the morning or 10 at night, but when your child needs you to get on their Zoom classroom, you need to be there. Or when your child's having a meltdown because he misses his teacher so badly and he's crying, you need to be there. And so I think the women that I've talked to have said, and they've said it publicly in front of men, which I love, is that they went into their own self-panic, and I think most of us did, like, what is the world coming to? And oh my God, is everybody going to die? And you worry about your parents and your friends and your family. And said, but you can't panic in front of your staff. You had to come to work every day saying, we can do it. And you had to be that strong, nurturing person to lift them up and say, hey, it's not going to be a normal work day, but we're going to make it through. So I have seen women who have said they really tapped into their empathy, which is, I think, a strong suit for more women than men naturally. But then I think that the males that have been in procurement have had and learned so much more empathy by watching their spouses and their own family units. Like, why is it okay that I tell everyone to shush because I am having a meeting, and yet when my wife has a meeting, I don't keep the kids quiet for her sake. That's her issue to deal with. And so as you talk to people, I think women have really tapped into the empathy, the nurturing side, and yet at the same time, we've had to show incredible strength and positivity. So even if we didn't know, is it 2 weeks? Is it 3 weeks? Are we going to work from home forever? Are we ever opening the offices? Oh my God, people are dying. People in our firm have sick family members. How do we deal with all of that? We suddenly had to change the way we interacted. And I think being a woman has been a little bit easier in tapping into those conversations. And like I said, not that I haven't seen a lot of successful men, but I really applaud those who have looked at the women and rather than judging, like I do feel a lot did, I do feel that they've become so much more empathetic and part of the solution rather than part of the problem, and much more flexible. So I think that's been important. And the other part too is having people inside your homes. I don't know how your staff has felt about it, but I read an interesting article about kids, that kids did not want to have Zoom on because, the social economic barriers between children or disparity was very obvious between, I have a single room with 8 siblings running around and somebody else has this beautiful, gorgeous bedroom that they're, zooming in from. And so I think people were the same way in the workplace. Having a camera on suddenly shows you that I have no art on these walls right here. And, people might judge, the way that you live, or that you're working from a basement, and how does that sound? And so I think the empathy for our employees has increased. I think the need to judging it doesn't have a place. Judging doesn't help anyone. So why not learn from all of these things that we've experienced and everything that we've read about the children and the social pressures on the humans, the adults as well. I think it's been a really great learning episode. And I spoke with some folks and I said, as much as I didn't like 2020, I wouldn't want it to not have happened. I don't want to erase the year or pretend it didn't happen. I think we learned so much about humanity. I think it was a horrible year, as far as the deaths. I'm never going to say there's a silver lining in a pandemic. But if you're going to look for something positive, is we did rush into the transformation that a lot of people were holding back on. We did prove that work from home can work. We did prove to ourselves that we really miss each other and that we love the collaboration of being around people. So I think there's a lot of good things that came out of it. I certainly wish it didn't have to be a pandemic that taught us these lessons, but I think 2020 was a really big growth year for a lot of us. So Catherine, that's my take on it. I think being a woman was easier, but I certainly think a lot of men were able to shine as well.
We had some comments from people while you were answering, and I popped them up on the screen there. We did have a question from Mandy Berry. She wants to know, what is the best way to learn about and enter this career field? And Don, I know you're the perfect person to answer that question.
The best way to learn about it is, well, you obviously could get certified through SIG University, but this is not a commercial. We are, I came from something that people call boring, which was being a CPA. And a lot of people thought procurement was boring, but we are at the crux of every bad decision that takes place in a company, every bit of stupidity, redundancy, and waste that happens in an organization. And we can impact change as it's happening. So if you are someone who's curious, and you've got to have a natural curiosity to do a good job in sourcing. If you're someone who wants to read about global trends and worry about weather impacts and think about the big picture, sourcing is for you, because it is never the same thing from one day to the next. People used to go to procurement. It was sort of like you couldn't do anything else. You ended up in procurement in the olden days. And you took orders, you placed orders, and you operated off this green screen. You didn't have to have a personality. And that was it. It is not that now. Now you've got to be a salesperson, you've got to be an influencer, you've got to worry about change management. And there's such an impact you can make in the organization. So if you have a natural curiosity and you'd like to make, and you like to influence outcomes, this is the career for you. And there's lots of ways to get into it. And our career network, we're always posting for people that have got openings and entry-level positions. Coming right out of school, you don't need a supply chain degree. Most of the people didn't even go to school when there was a supply chain degree possibility. So you don't need that to get into sourcing. You have to have natural curiosity. You have to be interested in people and change. And it is the coolest career you could possibly choose.
I'm learning that. And that's been one of the greatest lessons I've learned in the year and a half I've been with Una is how dynamic this field really is. I'm a marketer and I'm thriving within procurement. There are people with so many different skill sets that can apply themselves in so many different ways in procurement. And I want to jump back to some of the comments here. Cindy, just so you know, everybody is responding to your shirt. We've got Notorious RBG. Mandy says, yes, RBG. I know Madison is saying yes to RBG. Kaylee, our very own, she's saying Cindy representing the Queen. Yes. RBG in the building. Love it. And then we've got some show suggestions. I saw Queen's Gambit in there. I saw a few others. Let's see here. The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, another great one. Sarah? Shout out to Sarah Scudder, first of all. None of this would be possible without Sarah's guidance, support, and I don't know that she knows it or not, but she basically adopted me in this last year and how to even engage and be a part of the procurement and sourcing industries network. So love you, Sarah. Thanks for being here. Let's see here. We have a few more questions and comments. Dawn, I'm going to put up a comment here from Kaylee. She says, agreed, having Zoom meetings is a forced open door policy to one's home and should come with grace with an individual's preference on how it impacts them. Love that. And Mackenzie's got a question. She says, do you think the empathy and understanding will continue through 2021 as the pandemic subsides? As a leader, how do you ensure that it will? Great question.
So absolutely, we have proven that empathy is a wonderful trait. And, people can talk EQ, IQ, you can put any kind of acronym around it you want, but we don't do sourcing to people. We create sourcing agreements and then we guide people to buy off of these contracts. So at the end of the day, I can have the best black and white, bottom line, huge impact. Don't be an idiot. Of course you're going to do it. But if people don't want to follow, they're not going to take advantage and we're not going to get the savings or the changes to our organization. So at the end of the day, I think everyone has understood that people make the changes. People adopt the new norms. So if you lose empathy and go back to command and control, you're going to lose out and you won't be invited to the table. So the best thing a procurement person can have is empathy and understanding and curiosity about what can make someone else successful. So if it ends, then shame on you. I've always believed in it as part of the workplace, and it's something that we always teach in our leadership course. We teach that empathy is absolutely critical, but it's not always about the numbers. And coming from a hard science background, I have to tell you, I had a big come to Jesus with myself, because it used to be like, look, right here, it adds up. Hello, duh. Of course you're going to do it. That's the right thing, black and white. And I realized it doesn't matter how black and white or how big or how loud I say the numbers. If people don't want to go along with me, I'm not going to make the changes I wanted. So I had to go back and learn all my people skills because that wasn't a natural for me. And, I would never, ever go back to being that black and white person that I was before. And people make the changes. People are the reason that we deliver the amazing results that we do. People are the reason that we got through the pandemic. People are the reason that we were able to shore up our supply chain. And by God, let's not waste a pandemic. I mean, people are saying supply chain and sourcing as in part of their conversation. Now, they might be talking about toilet paper and Clorox wipes, but it doesn't matter. They're saying the words. So if we let this pandemic go to waste and we don't continue as empathetic leaders, then shame on all of us. I know within SIG, we're going to be focused on it.
Love that. And you guys, we're getting so many questions come through. There's one here that I want to save for the full group. So Avita Gore, just know that I see your question and I feel like we need a response from everyone. So I'll wait until we're a little bit further through before we answer your question, but it's a good one. I do want to move on so that we can give a chance for Jill and Cindy to get their questions answered. So Jill, if you want to take the floor here and first let us know what show you are loving right now, and then we will get to your panel question.
Okay. Well, I have watched Emily in Paris, Ozark. Those would be the two that I binge watched and enjoyed. And after that, I think everything's kind of on hold. So I haven't gotten myself sucked back in just yet. I've been reading books and spending time with our son.
Okay, and bear with me as I'm figuring out these screens.
Okay.
Okay, I have your question here.
Okay.
So many women across industries found themselves as the ultimate multitaskers, working from home, taking care of children, during the pandemic. And for those of us in procurement, supply chain sourcing, we found that we were sourcing at home as well as at work. How do you think that affected business outcomes?
Yeah, I think what Don mentioned just about showing empathy, something that I have been, I'd say my entire career. So when I was an individual contributor, as I transitioned into leadership around 16 years ago, it's just being human, being part of the team, contributing, showing people that you truly care, and, being flexible because I remember when, and it was not that long ago, when you would have leaders that your butt had to be in the seat. So it was butts in seats. And if you were at a meeting or you were, at a doctor's appointment or not in your seat, you were judged. And it's ridiculous, right, to think about because it's about results. So I have applied that to my team, how I lead, how I manage people, and how I mentor people as well. It's important just to be human and coach and guide people to treat others. It's basic, but treat others the way you would want to be treated. Coach for improvement, challenge people, set the bar high. And I think business outcomes really are going to continue to improve and have improved, but it's going to be different. The results may not look the same, and you probably are going to see more creativity because people are being flexible. They're able to apply, learnings from their home life, from their family life. And, having managed a global team for a very long time, just having that autonomy and allowing people to try new things and to not crucify them if something doesn't work. It's all about bringing the stakeholders with you. So as Dawn had mentioned, you can sign the best darn supply agreement, services agreement, SaaS agreement, hardware, acquisition agreement. It doesn't matter. If the stakeholders are not aligned, then, you're going to be hung out to dry. So, I think applying that flexibility and, knowing that there's no better seat in an organization than in procurement to see what's going on across the entire value chain. I've said this for years. You didn't have supply chain degrees when I was in school. It's something that I happened into, and I'm very glad I did. I think it's a blessing. And those of us who have been at it a long time, it's in our blood. And, don't take that for granted. Continue to pull others up, continue to coach others. And, like I said, be human, show support, be flexible. And, I'll share a story. So when the pandemic started last February, March timeline, our organization was going through major change, M&A. We were separating from a previous parent of over 60 years. I was working around the clock, having people reporting to me in every time zone. And, with a 5-year-old son at home, I would be on calls before he would wake up in the morning, all the way through dinner time. And he would come in, to this room and open the door. And one day he's like, "Mommy, you're still working? Aren't you so tired of working so much?" And I said, "He's 5." And at the time he was 4. And I slammed my computer shut and I was like, my priorities were completely out of whack. And a few months later, I decided to take an extended parenting leave to be present with him. Because for years, the first 3-4 years of his life, I worked all the time, and that's what he saw.
Amazing answer. And it sparked several questions.
Okay.
And it seemed like as you were speaking, people's questions were reflective of exactly what you were talking about. So we're going to try to get through all of these here.
Okay.
Brody Saunders wants to know, how How would you recommend getting a female mentor in the procurement field? Thank you for the inspiring words, ladies.
I follow the right groups on LinkedIn. You're looking at several people here that I'm sure would be willing to have a conversation and see where your interests are and recommend someone. What I will say is procurement is a very welcoming community. We all are here to help each other. We've all learned different lessons along the way. So don't be afraid to reach out. People are human. And if you message them on LinkedIn, hopefully you get a human response and not a robotic response.
I can personally vouch for everybody on this screen being so welcoming, and a lot of people that are attending right now. You're all amazing, and the network is so thick on this live panel. Mm-hmm. So Sarah Scudder, Madison, all of you wonderful women, if you are open to mentoring, please just add it to the comments, and we'll make sure to get those up on screen as we go through. Yeah. I've got another question for you. Let's see here. This is from Zoe. She wants to know, how do you see the need for work flexibility on female talent retention and recruitment, and balancing that with recent articles stressing the corporate desire to be back in the office?
Oh gosh. I think it's different depending on what industry you're in. So, I'll speak kind of in general. I'm a big fan of flexibility, as I had mentioned. Years ago when work from home was not popular, I had a very direct conversation with my boss, and I was like, Fridays I'm working from home. If my productivity slips, if the outcomes slip, if the deliverables slip, it's on me, and they never did. So I think as long as you measure those outcomes, it's critical, but it's different for everyone. I think just having an open conversation, setting the bar high, for yourself. I see corporate real estate, in terms of office space, it'll be changing, I'd say, over the next several years, and you'll see a lot more flexibility, flex workspaces. So that's my prediction.
I think the pandemic has turned all of that upside down, and it's up to us to claim that flexibility, because I can't speak for everyone on this panel, but I know at UNA, our productivity has gone through the roof. Yes, with our schedule flexibility. Yes. Let's see here. Okay, so some of the women, obviously, they're amazing. They gave themselves in as mentoring possibilities here. So Amanda Prochaska with Global Women Procurement Professionals, she's amazing. Love her. She's doing so much this month for women in procurement. Find her on LinkedIn and go to her profile, look at the website. She's got an entire schedule this month. She's a great one to get hooked up with. Sarah Scudder, of course. Yeah. And then we have Katie Smith. She's open to mentoring. Love that. All right.
And Catherine, I'm always open too. So,
oh, good.
Down, and I think, we are master networkers as well, depending on the interests of the specific individual.
So we have one last question before we move on to Cindy and all of her amazingness. Do any of you, and I guess anybody can answer this one, do any of you foresee AI/automation dominating the procurement role in the near future? Not so much purchasing functions, but procurement, where women may be the first to feel the effects. That's a heavy question. Anyone want to take that?
So I'll step in here. Yes and no. So the conversations that I'm having now are, we had two types of different businesses during the pandemic, right? We had essential and first non-essential. And for those that were essential workers, it was, how do we get these workers in here and keep working, right? Keep making profit and keep making money. And unfortunately, when one person got sick or a production line got shut down, that took out either the entire line or the entire plant. So I know a lot of our members are asking, well, how can we automate something like this for the future where somebody gets sick, or if there's another, pandemic, God forbid, that we can keep business up and running. And so from that perspective, I do see automation maybe helping. It might end up hurting, right? Those who are working out on the line, it might be women first. It might be anybody. But that being said, those are the conversations I'm having right now. Not necessarily anything is happening, but those are the next steps, or probably the conversations of the future that are happening within procurement and certainly supply chain, of how do we keep the lights on and how do we have the least amount of people, helping or in that production, if you will.
All right. Thank you, Cindy, for that. Jill or Don, feel free if you want to add to that before we move on to Cindy's panel question.
Yeah, so the only thing that I'd like to add, Catherine, is I am a huge fan of automation. And what we have learned through this process is that, the stuff that sits in binders or in drawers back at the office and all of that, we need to have repositories, we need to have access to it remotely. But I also truly believe that smart people don't want to do dumb work. And most stuff that we automate is dumb work. It's repetitive, it's boring. And so, yeah, maybe the buyer of the 1960s didn't mind just pushing buttons and checking boxes. To attract and retain the right kind of people today, they don't want to do that. And they don't want to just be doing spreadsheets for the sake of doing it. They want predictive analytics. They want to be able to go in and do the fun, the sexy stuff that we do. So I'm a fan of automation. If it gets rid of dumb work and waste of time type work, I'm all for it. So I don't think that's going to hit women worse than men in any way, shape, or form. I think if you're bright, you're going to have the exciting work to do. And if you like to just be a paper pusher, a box checker, then maybe it's time to retire, because that's really not the future of procurement. So that is my take on automation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with the paper pushing and the admin work. For those of you who have not tuned into the Sourcing Hero podcast yet, that is Una's branded podcast, and so many of the guests on that show have talked about that exactly. It's no surprise that procurement is requiring more strategic thinkers than tactical execution. So great point.
Yeah.
And we'll lead right into Cindy. And Cindy, go ahead and tell us what you are watching right now, and then we'll move on to your panel question.
So I'm not a huge binger, but the last thing that I did binge was Schitt's Creek. So it took months and months for somebody to talk me into it. We finally watched it like within a weekend. So it's, if you like slap happy and you want a belly laugh, I highly recommend it. And then recently I got back into, I'm a huge Seinfeld fan. So unpopular opinion here, Catherine, don't fall out of your chair, but I'm not big into The Office. So I'm under the opinion there's two types of people in the world. Either you like The Office or you like Seinfeld. And people can comment, but they're very rare that people like, I think they like both and. I think it's either or. So I'm a Seinfeld person. And recently my dad said a Seinfeld quote to me, and I just kind of looked at him. He goes, "You haven't seen that episode?" And so I was very disappointed in myself that I didn't know that quote. So I've been rewatching Seinfeld, because a good Seinfeld fan will find another Seinfeld fan with, these pretzels are making me thirsty. And you look over at them and give them a wink because it's from Seinfeld. So those are the two shows I've kind of been watching lately.
I am going to try not to be offended.
Unpopular opinion, I know, and most of the people are like, "How do you not like The Office?" I get it. I'll ask you the same thing. How do you not like Seinfeld?
Right. No, I like Seinfeld. I do. It's just The Office is on in my house every day. For those of you who can see behind that door right there is my office door, and there is an actual Office sign from The Office on there. Thank you, Brian Hyder. That was my company gift from him last year. Some other really great show suggestions here in the comments. The devil's advocate.
Mhm.
Oh wait, no, that was a question, not a show. There are so many comments, you guys, and questions. I'm going to do my best to get to all of them. Oh, we've got Ride or Die Team Office here. And then
I'm
Kaylee,
sure that's Dawn. I'm sure that's Dawn.
Kaylee agreed with you. She's Team Seinfeld.
Thank you.
Supply Chain Now says, I always see it as you're either a Friends person versus the Office person. I think that's more accurate.
Well, yeah, because I like Friends. Yeah.
Mhm.
Makes sense. Sam Stryker, she's Ride or Die Team Office. I love that. Sam, gonna have to talk later.
Mhm.
Lots of people are Team Seinfeld. Okay, you got
Right.
some people in your corner here. All right, Cindy. So before you fully introduce yourself, I'm going to give you your panel question here. So I mentioned earlier in the beginning of the hour here that we sent out a survey to over 100 women in procurement. And you mentioned in your survey response that we should be asking suppliers how we can avoid supply chain disruption in 2021, and that supplier KPI should be established. And as we learn about your position here at UNA, this is going to be a really great question for you to answer. But what do you think we should be measuring going forward, and why? So go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll get that panel question answered.
Right. So as a reminder, I'm a senior sourcing advisor here at UNA. I work with our members every single day on, again, strategies, both tactical and strategic. And really, it's just a great time to work with our members to be conversational, where I work alongside of our members as an extension of their team, but also kind of as a consultant, if you will, or somebody that can push them in their squishy spots and maybe make them a little bit uncomfortable and make them ask questions or do things that they haven't really, thought about before. So KPIs, or key performance indicators, are very, very important. So at UNA, we have them for not only our team, but ourselves individually. It's very important because every morning when I wake up, I know what I need to do to be successful. And when I lay my head down at night, I know if I had a good, successful day or not, just based off of my KPIs. And I'm a huge believer and advocate of, if you know what you need to do to be successful, you're going to be successful, right? And those are measurable goals or items that you're supposed to hit. And that goes for our suppliers or partners as well, right? So they need to know what success looks like to partner with your organization. In this past year, again, as Dawn had mentioned, I'm not happy about it, but there were some, I'll say, good things that came out of it. And those are conversations that I'm having with our members. So what went well? What did not go well? And those conversations are different with our members that are essential organizations and non-essential organizations. And those are just the types of things that we need to mark down and make sure that we're keeping notes on of what went well and what didn't go well. So the KPIs, I work with our members on, first of all, do you have one or not? And it's not an embarrassing question, and it's not meant to embarrass anybody. It's just a good place to start, right? So if you don't have anything, let's start small. We don't have to boil the ocean. But what's important to you and your organization? Is delivery important? Is cost important? Is quality important? So let's get something measurable down so that we know from our suppliers or supplier partners moving forward if they're hitting your standards or not. For our members that are a little bit, more further down the road and they might have KPIs in place, I'm asking our members rather, are you taking a look at your current KPIs and maybe adjusting them? 2020 was a really weird year. And so a typical KPI might not have covered everything that happened in 2020. So for example, delivery. Well, do you have allocation on your delivery portion of your scorecard? It's very important, right? So lead time turns into allocation. I'm speaking with a lot of members, and let me say this. Procurement people are the most empathetic and sympathetic people to procurement folks in supply chain. So nobody was screaming and nobody was upset They understand what allocation is and why it's happening. But at the end of the day, what they want was answers and, corrective action. And so that's also what I'm speaking with our members about is how do we add corrective action onto a scorecard so that we make sure moving forward that when there is disruption in a supply chain or in our goods or services, that we have a plan moving forward. So the past is in the past, and now let's move forward with our supplier partners, and they're just that, right? They're our partners. And we need to work together to make sure that moving forward, that this doesn't happen again, or it's the least amount of disruption as possible. So those are the types of conversations we're having. So for those of you sitting out there that do manage suppliers or supplier partners, you were very empathetic and sympathetic in 2020, but now is the time to have those conversations and be reflective. And for the women out there who, my CEO always tells me, it's Stephen Covey's withdrawals and deposits. Me personally, I don't ask for enough withdrawals, but I deposit. Now is the time for the women out there listening to ask for the withdrawals. So you need to ask your supplier partners, why did this happen? What are we going to do moving forward? Can you guarantee me this? Whatever those conversations are, we need to be having them, because now is the time to make sure that we clean up the mess and make sure that moving forward, it's better than it was. And let me say this, 2021, just because we got there, we're not going to wipe our brow and say, well, thank goodness we're here, it's going to be all better. There's still disruption, there's still issues, and we need to be transparent with each other of what those are, and certainly be as proactive and provisional as possible to make sure that you have that transparency. So you need to ask for that. So those are the conversations I'm having around KPIs, and certainly I encourage everybody listening to make sure that if you do have KPIs, go take a look at them, scrub them up, make sure that they are capturing everything currently, and then, kind of what happened in the past. Certainly, if you don't have them, reach out to me on LinkedIn. There's a lot of good resources out there that have really good templates that help you start out, again, so that you're not overwhelmed. But starting somewhere is definitely what I'm encouraging our members to do.
We've got some great comments there. Zoe says, great insight, Cindy, 100%. Sam, well said, Cindy. Great insights from Paul. Thank you for sharing. We still got some more votes for Seinfeld. So Cindy, you made an impact there. And then Amy, Outlander. I am currently in it. I can't stop. I don't want these seasons to end. It's basically ruling my life. I love Outlander. You guys should check it out. It's on Netflix. We have a couple really great questions, and we have a few more minutes. So I am going to ask the group here. So when I misspoke earlier and said devil's advocate, it was not a show. It was a question. I'm going to put it up here on the board. I would love for anyone here to respond. So Flavia said, I'll be a bit of the devil's advocate here. How do we ensure we are not perpetuating a position of female inferiority in procurement? Wow.
I'm happy to start, Catherine.
Great.
Don't be a victim. You can change and lead the way you want to be led. And I shared that earlier, but it's 100% true. The best way to change is to lead by example, and push the envelope. Don't be afraid to have those tough conversations with HR. Data is friendly, facts are friendly, your results, continue to push yourself and deliver results that are, better than your peers, because ultimately you're being evaluated against your peers. So continue to do that, bring best practices in, work with your suppliers to innovate and collaborate. So, I view this as an opportunity, and continue to push the envelope. And the best, performer should be rewarded, whether, they are male or female, it shouldn't matter. So, continue to push yourself, and think outside the box.
As you saw Heather's comment come through on the screen there, mic drop. Mm-hmm. I think you answered that very well, Jill. Dawn, did you have any thoughts to add to that?
Yeah, first off, I don't think women need to be seen as inferior, but I also think that we need to take the traits that are female, like your ability to be emotional. You know, I as a woman am more comfortable saying this really means a lot to this company. We really have to get it right, and I commit to you that I'm going to put 100% of my capabilities behind this project. You know, I can say things that, yeah, maybe it sounds a little emotional and, oh, she's throwing it all out there. A man's not as comfortable saying it. And yet there's nothing wrong with what I said. So I think the things that men see as inferiorities are actually our strengths and our ability, you know, the empathy. Why is that inferiority? That I care about the people and I care about their children and I want them to be happy as individuals and I want them to be fulfilled. That's not a weakness. And so I'm just proving that the things that some people see as our weaknesses are actually our strengths. Why can't I get emotional? Why can't I be touched? Why can't I put my heart out there to show you how much I care? You know, maybe you're not comfortable doing it as a man, but maybe you should learn from us. So I think there's a lot. I think what people perceive as our weaknesses are actually some of our greatest strengths.
Sorry if you're hearing somebody's car alarm outside on my end here, but I'm back in the office, as you can see, and we just don't know what sounds are outside. As we wrap up, I want to remind everyone we have a second session coming up. So next week we'll have Stephanie LaPierre of Tealbook, Sarah Scudder of RSN, Madison Mobley of Fair Market. Again, same time on Wednesday, 12 p.m. Central. I hope you all join us again for that session. I will get the screens right next time. I'm hoping that we won't have too many technical issues. I want to thank everybody for coming today. I especially want to thank the people of Una, this brand, our CEO, Anthony Clarevie, and our majority of women in the company that are killing it every day. Cindy, Kaylee, Crystal, Emily, Mackenzie, we're all pushing forward and really trying to empower procurement. So before we finish up, I want to give our panelists one last chance to add thoughts. And I'm going to look through the comments here, see if there's any other questions we want to answer. While I'm doing that, is there anything, Cindy, that you wanted to add today?
I'll just say, you know, how can I help be an ally for women in procurement? And it's simple. It's two words, just ask. I think as women, we don't ask enough. And I'm not saying ask for forgiveness. I'm saying, you know, just ask. You never know if you don't ask. So, you know, as a salesperson, ask for the sale. As a individual, ask for the raise. So I think oftentimes we're too quiet. And so, you know, push yourself to ask. Again, it goes back to my earlier comment about withdrawals and deposits. Ask for more withdrawals, and you might be surprised at what happens.
So, Catherine, I just want to finish with, you know, we just went through an exercise on this book called Brag. It's not a 4-letter word. And if you get a chance to read it, it's more about your personal branding than it is the corporate side of it. But you can apply it to corporate, but it's how to toot your own horn. And so many people hear the word brag and they think it is a 4-letter word. And so we're doing a number of exercises. I have somebody in my own firm that I almost fired multiple times because I didn't know what she did. And I'm so glad I didn't do it. Once I finally realized she is one of the most amazing people I've ever met, but she never bragged. And so if you don't talk about what you can do, you do get overlooked, even in a small firm. So it's something that I really think that women especially need to learn how to do. It's not a 4-letter word. There is an art to it. So anyways, that's just something that we're working on right now so that people speak up and they're heard.
Love that. I know we're at time. There was one more question that I wanted to answer. I promised Evita in the very beginning here that we would answer it. She has a question here. Any recommendations for certification in the procurement field that are beneficial to add to one's skill set? Real quick, if one of the ladies here would like to answer that one.
Yeah, I think, Don already mentioned the SIG certification. I think depending on the industry that you're in, find out what makes sense as you support your stakeholders and your team and, work with the suppliers in the marketplace. But she offers a very solid program, Institute of Supply Management, there's SIPs. So there are different ones. Like we offered earlier, we're all happy to be a sounding board as you're looking to get certifications.
Wonderful. And so we're going to repurpose this and have the video ready to replay, hoping for Friday. So we'll post this up on LinkedIn, Facebook, all of our socials. And so if you missed some of the details on this, we'll be able to come back and go through it. And I just want to thank everyone, especially in the audience, for submitting questions, comments. It's been so much fun engaging with you. Please come back next week. It's probably going to be a little bit smoother, even though today's conversation was amazing. Thank you all, ladies. And I hope you have a great rest of the week and just keep on empowering women. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.